Office of the 3-minute rule.
I'm going to try. Thank you very much. So there's a lot of history here. I am John Martin, and I do represent House District 1 in northwestern Aroostook County. I want to tell you, as I look around this room, I don't see many people that were around when we enacted the legislation, and very quickly the history of what happened. At the very beginning, matter of fact, there was a bill to create LURC. It was unanimously postponed. Subsequently to that, as a result of that postponement, there was a bill that was created to do a study order, to study what structure ought to be and how it should be structured. And that is what resulted in the first bill in '67. Subsequent to that, we made some amendments in '69. I would point out, as you read the testimony, I would suggest that you go back and take a look at the testimony, especially the speeches that were in the Senate by former Republican Senator Barry, who was then the majority floor leader, and the minority floor leader, then Elmer Violet of Van Buren. That's what created LURC, and that's where it began. I want to tell you that I had the dubious honor of serving as a second chair of the Land Use Regulation Commission prior to the decision by the legislature that elected public officials should not be sitting on any boards appointed by the governor. Let me just tell you a couple of my experiences as chair, and it really demonstrated the need for why we needed a structure such as Land Use Regulation Commission. We had an incident which occurred in Greenville where people built a camp and decided that they were going to put the septic system wherever they wanted to. They put it in front of the building, about 50 feet away from the lake. That was what was going on in northern Maine and western Maine at the time. We ended up trying to work with the individual, and it so happened he was from New Jersey, and finally got so frustrated, the board ended up creating a situation. They decided to go to Superior Court to destroy the building. I came into the office one day, and there was this gentleman sitting on the doorsteps of the LURC office and said to me, "I'd like to talk to someone. What can I do?" So we met with him and said very simply, "Go put your sewer system where it belongs." And he was more than willing to accept, but only after it was forced upon that individual. That's part of our problem. The next thing I want to point out to you is that there are a lot of good intentions out there. I own LURC, land in the LURC region as well. But I do think as well we need to control what goes on in that area. One thing I wanted, and as my time comes to an end here, I want to tell you very quickly what I think you ought to do. You've had dropped on you three pieces of legislation, frankly, extremely complicated, and go to the heart of what it is and what we ought to be in Maine. I would suggest that you kill all three of them, and at that point create a study group that then would have some time over the next year to do this in a rational way. The last thing in the world that I would want you to ever consider is donating that power to the counties. For a number of reasons. I'll make only two now. One, it would not be the same. And two, there are some counties where I'd never want to give county commissioners the authority to control anything. So I think that it's clear to me that you need some time. And I would hope that you would use that time available to do that. And I think that as you look at it, and I want to say this, by the way, just to illustrate, I'm convinced that there has to be changes. I'm not opposed to that. But I'll give you one of the things that happened when I was chair. The way the law was structured, and I was involved in the structuring, there were 3 people that were from the environmental movement and 3 from industry. As it was created, the people in this room would shake their heads and agree. And so every decision, it was 3 to 3, and I was the one making every single decision. It was a horrible process. But finally, I came in with a bill and said, we got to change this. It just isn't working. And we finally did. Now, that's not to say that it can't be changed some more, because there's a process that can be changed. But I tell you right now, you don't want to do what is suggested in some of these bills.
Thank you. That was very close to 3 minutes.
I'll be more happy. I could go on for hours about this, but I won't do that.
I do have I always do this to create competition for you because you have a better memory. You have a photographic memory here, but it was mentioned about, you know, back in the 60s, and one of the county commissioners talked about the original LURC was so many miles from a road. They said that instead of 10 million acres, that was expanded out and expanded out over time. Is that in your memory also?
Absolutely. What happened was the original bill that was put in, lo and behold, we got snookered. And it controlled about 2% of the unorganized territory in Maine. Some of you may, in this room, may remember. And that's why we came back the following session with the second bill to correct what had been left out.
So then, you recall how many million acres were there for expanded?
I don't recall off the initial amount. I don't.
Okay, and then on the question of the septic system, guys from New Jersey seem to cause all the problems.
It so happened that's where he was from.
I've gone down the Allegheny with those guys. It's interesting to watch them, but that's not the issue. The issue of DEP and septic, it would seem to me if we leave the DEP and those things in position, that septic system would never happen even under county commissioners. And then the third one I'd say, if you don't like the county commissioners, there's always an election process that they can run for election.
I wouldn't have any problem, frankly, on that third one. I will tell you this, that as far as it's the Department of Human Services that controls the septic system, but you need someone to have file for a permit so you know the building is there. And you know, I live in a small town. We tend to know everything that goes on. Lo and behold, the other day, we discovered that there was someone who had built a cabin in the woods, had been there for 6 years, never been taxed. Needless to say, under the law, we were able to recover 3 years of that. But that goes on in the woods all the time.
Thank you. Senator Schneider?
Thank you. Can you tell me when you have some historical knowledge here about how contentious, I guess it's always been sort of contentious, but it seems like more recently, I certainly hear it in my district, you can see people who have come and testified in favor of this.
Absolutely.
That's my, and if you can just tell me that piece of it, and then tell me what the danger is of putting this to elected officials and why we didn't do that in the first place.
Let me just say, first of all, that Northern Maine Woods has changed a great deal since 1965, etc. Many of the landowners there are real stewards of the land. There were paper companies, they were landowners, they were land agents, and they basically